Welcome to episode 22 of today's Candor. I'm your host, Barika. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. In this episode, I'm discussing compatibility. Compatibility, what is it, right? Well, for me, it means bringing together your similarities, your differences, bringing those things together and working together for the better, bringing it all together and making it work. Whether that's your significant other, your spouse, your partner, your person. I often refer to just all those things, your person, your right hand. And so, in my opinion, my thoughts, I just think that being able to bring those things together and making it work, that's compatibility. And it's not deal breakers. It's not saying that there should be anything negatively impacting your well being or your relationship, and no one should be taken advantage of. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't want to be, and let me say this, because I often hear, observe, see, more often than not, hearing people think or interchange compatibility with like being one and the same. And it's absolutely not. And it's like, don't you want to learn from your other half? To me, that's always a big thing. Like, I should be able to learn from you, no matter what realm or aspect of life it is. You just being able to teach me certain things because, whether it's we came from a different upbringing, a different background, there's an age difference, whatever the case may be, but be able to teach me something. Because even if you could be with someone that's one and the same, air quotes, it's like, why would you even want to do that? What experiences have you had that make you different from me and vice versa? So that we can just learn about different things, experience different things together, maybe something that neither one of us have experienced. And we're like, hey, that's never happened for me either. So let's do that. Let's experience whatever it is, whether it's traveling somewhere, a new restaurant, a new type of food, whatever the case may be. But when I hear people who are dating and they think that they are supposed to be overly similar, if you will, that's crazy to me. It's like, what are you really expecting? Who are you really expecting this other person to be? And that's why sometimes you'll hear some people refer to their person as their better half. They'll say because maybe they have those characteristics, those traits, maybe those attributes that they're just like, they really admire them for. And that's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. So I always like to say, and it took me some time, even though I've always known that, you definitely shouldn't be polar opposites, and you shouldn't be too similar or overly similar. But there are things that there are things that should be similar in your relationship, your values. And I mean, for very important things, like if you all are going to raise a family together, for example, one of you can't want to raise children a certain way and the other party in the relationship wants to raise children a total opposite way, because you're going to inevitably clash. You're going to bump heads. There's going to be these outrageous arguments, tension, stress, whatever. And no one needs all that negativity. So it's like, these are important conversations to have early on so that you can weed out the foolishness, or maybe understand that you two just don't belong together. And so sometimes people are worried about having similarities or differences about the very smallest, minute things that shouldn't take precedence in a relationship. And it's like, are you really thinking about things that you should have similarities, in regards to? Things like your values, priorities. Yes, you all are going to have different priorities, but there needs to also, you may have, your separate priorities as far as careers and what have you. But as far as things, like I mentioned, if one of you wants a family, the other one doesn't. If that's a priority for one and the other one's like, not really looking to start a family soon, and the other person is like, well, that's something I really want to do, that needs to be a conversation, because that could be a deal breaker. But if it's just something like, oh, hey, we can come to a common ground on when we want to start the family, boom, there you go. Simple communication. But you definitely shouldn't want to be this one and the same with your person. The reason I always say, like, being with someone who can teach you different things and vice versa, you can also teach them, is because that's how we learn. Learning isn't just because, you're finished school and it's said and done. You should be learning every day, whether that's reading, listening to somebody talk, listening to podcasts, seminars, whatever the case may be, TED Talks. You should be learning. But it's always been very important to me that I'm able to learn from my partner. And so with me, for you all who excuse me, might not have heard me speak on this earlier on in previous episodes, my person is 9 years older than me. And that's a difference, because it's also a generational difference. And so we talk about different things that, it's like, well, hey, this is what, I believe and how I see it and things of that nature. But the other thing is, I also have an old soul. He's 9 years older than I am. So just so you all have some context, but our upbringing was totally different. And I don't say that at all in a bad way, because there are different things that he has seen and experienced from me and vice versa. And being able to bring that together and share and teach someone like, hey, well, this is why I view certain things the way I do. Or even if there's maybe habits that you're trying to break, that's also helpful. But it's like, if you're not willing to learn that person and understand where certain things stem from, whether it's habits, traits, why they value certain things, you have to be able to learn that. Just like you want to learn all the cutesy stuff, your favorite color and what you like to eat and this and that and how you want to go on a date. That's lovely. All those things are beautiful. But you also have to be willing to learn the more complex things, because those are the things that are either going to keep you all together, or it's either going to make or break you. And it's either going to make or break your relationship. And that's just what it is. That's just the fact of the matter. But being able to be willing to say, okay, if I want to learn all that cutesy romantic stuff, that, that's the bonus. But being able to sit down and learn your person's complexities, learning why they operate the way they do, why they move the way they do. And it's not always easy, because of just everything is not going to be, hey, this is all the good stuff from my upbringing. These are all the good memories. There may be some traumas. There may be some difficult times. And if your person is vulnerable enough with you and they share those things with you, it also allows you to more easily learn and understand why they move the way they do. And then that also allows you to say, okay, these are our similarities and our differences. This is what makes us compatible. These are the pieces that maybe not so compatible on. But if it's nothing crazy, if it's not a deal breaker, at the end of the day, we are all flawed. We are all flawed. But if you don't have the patience or the tolerance to put up with any flaws, you need to be by yourself. You need to be single until you are ready to say, okay, I'm ready to learn someone and what they come with. Yes, some people have more extreme baggage, but we all have some stuff with us. We all have our ways. It is what it is. And we don't look at ourselves as having those ways, because we just walk around like, oh, well, I'm just normal. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because normal is relative, right? So we walk around like, well, you will not hear many people be able to not only accept the fact, but also just admit to and say out loud, and maybe, just in conversation with you, like, hey, I know I have some ways about me. Most people are not going to say that. They'll know in their head, but they may not say that to their person. They may not admit it to anyone at all. But that is a different level of vulnerability. And a lot of people, they won't say that, because that would lead to self-evaluation and just looking yourself in the mirror and being able to say, what's up with me? Not always what's up with the other person. And none of this is to say that you are supposed to just deal with whatever in a relationship, because let me tell you, I am absolutely not the one. I'm not. But it is to say that you have to be able to sit back and say, let me learn my person. If you like or love them enough and you are trying to really get to know that person, if you're trying to build with that person, you're going to go through some stuff with them. And some of that, it's not always stuff as in your relationship, you're going through stuff with them, just worldly factors. And you have to be able to say, okay, this is what comes with it. Another thing that I want to mention is we don't always think about the older we get, let me see how I want to word this because I thought about this earlier on, but the older we get and we are, let's say you're still dating, but let's say you're like 30s and up, you are dealing with a different type of dating. You are dealing with a different type of, there may be more factors. I don't want to necessarily say traumas because that's not what it's always categorized as. But when you start to date, if you're dating at a certain age, you are learning and dealing with different pieces of that person. So for example, when you're dating maybe at like, 18, 19, 20, still in college dating, maybe even that little bit after college. So you're still in your, like, let's say your early 20s. We're just taking a person who right out of high school went to college. When you're dating right in there, and let's just take a person who, no children, and let's just say they haven't been married because like I said, you're in that early 20s. Not that it can't happen for anyone, but we're just speaking on what usually doesn't happen. So you're not dealing with, yes, you may be dealing with some of the other things that person has dealt with, whether it was a traumatic experience or just, different things that you experience in your childhood. And we all have those different upbringings. So of course that can be different for everyone. But when you start, let's say you're, still dating, you're still getting to know someone at that like 30 and up, different things come into play. There may be children. So now you're dealing with the exes with the children thing, the baby mothers and fathers. Then you might be dealing with people who are divorced. So then that's another layer added onto it. And then, especially just the older you're getting, you're dealing with different experiences. And it may be, are your parents, one party in that relationship, parents are getting older, maybe dealing with that. And if there are any, health concerns or medical issues, whatever the case may be. But just the older you get and the older you're dating, it becomes different. And those different complexities, they become sometimes a little harder to deal with. And you just have to take a step back and understand, okay, are you built to deal with those things? Do you want to? And you're not wrong if you don't want to, but you have to make that decision because it can be tough. It can be tough. And so just because, you may not have dealt with certain things and you're not dealing with them maybe because you don't have children or you're not divorced and what have you. But let's say the other party has those different experiences dealing with that. So that's something that you may be like, oh, okay, well, we're not compatible there, but still, how do we bring it all together? What are the other things that make us, work? What are the other things that make us love one another? And I don't think people really sit back and look at all the good in a relationship sometimes. Sometimes if it's one piece that is really bothering them, and it's not to say just to brush it under the rug because that is terrible. It's always going to come back. It's always going to haunt you if you don't handle it. But if there is something in the relationship that's bothering you, one, you have to talk about it. You have to hash it out with your person. There is no just, okay, it's whatever. It's not whatever. It's not going away. Approach it like an adult and talk about it. But the other thing is just if the good is outweighing the bad, because all relationships are going to have it. All relationships are going to have the good and the bad, the ups and downs. But if the good is outweighing the bad, I feel like a lot of people don't take that into account. They automatically go to the negative and say, okay, well, it's this one or, two things or whatever the case that's really bothering me. So ask yourself, have you addressed them yet? Have you addressed those things yet? And there are, as normal, I won't call anybody out. But when I hear people saying that maybe one or two things are wrong, especially if it's not something like outrageous and crazy, and you're like, oh no, like once again, deal breakers. But when they say like those couple things are wrong, or if it doesn't sit right with them, I'm like, well, two things, right? One, have you talked to that person about what it is that's bothering you and why? But let's say the person they've already had that conversation. And maybe they've had it more than once, because sometimes that has to happen too. Sometimes it's not always solved with the initial conversation. Fine. But I've had to ask sometimes some friends, some acquaintances, once again, won't call anybody out, but I've asked them, like, you mentioned all this other stuff that's so grand about the person. And then because they might piss you off in this one little piece, something that maybe just my opinion, I wouldn't think is too crazy. I won't give the example because surely it's going to give the person away. But it's like, some people are just insatiable. And I feel like those people, they need to be by themselves until they're really ready. They have their mind wrapped around what comes with being in a relationship. But compatibility is not every morning you wake up and everything is lovey-dovey. That's not compatibility. Compatibility is, once again, I know I'm different from you. I'm choosing to be in this space with you. I like you or love you enough to stay here and work through these differences because they aren't deal breakers. They're simply things that we see differently because of whatever factors, different upbringing, different values, as long as they're not, like I said, too off. But be able to understand that people just get in relationships and just go through them. I don't know what they think they're doing, whether they're watching too much TV, whether they're on social media too much. And, people think that their relationship goals, quote unquote, are supposed to be like the next person's. No, your relationship goals are supposed to be whatever you and that person have decided they're going to be. Stop looking at your friends or whoever else you're around and comparing, because that's where you automatically go wrong. You have to deal with the person that's in front of you. You need to deal with yourself and deal with the person in front of you. And be able to understand that person is automatically, it is inevitable that they are coming with a different perspective. Yes, you all are going to agree on some things. I'm not telling you to be with somebody that when you say the sky is blue, they're automatically going to say it's purple. I'm not telling you to do that. There are some people like that, where they just, every time you say something, the next thing they say has to be different. Like, please spare me. We're just talking about people who just see things differently because you are wired differently. Part of it is going to be, sometimes if it's just man and woman, that might be the inevitable, difference. But deal with the complexities. If you could say, I love all the cute stuff between us, and you really want to be with that person, you're going to have to handle some of the other stuff too. And I'm not saying it as if it's easy. I'm saying it to put it out there, because we like to sit back and say, well, I would have done this for you. But what I've had to come to learn, and I've had to really sit down and learn it. And my mommy said it to me one day. She said, Barika, don't expect you from other people. Well, hell, if that's not the best way to put it, don't expect you from other people. And let me tell you something. Even though she has always told me not to have certain expectations from other people, when she worded it that way, that was a game changer. And I said, okay, mommy, I truly understand. Don't expect you from other people. And it took me so long, and I won't even say that I 110% have it down pat yet. I won't sit here and lie. But my beautiful sister is always telling me, she has known me since I was 16 years old. She was going on 18. She is always telling me, and you would think we are blood, we are so tight. But she's always telling me, Barika, you know, you're so nurturing, so loving, so thoughtful, so mindful. Like, she's always telling me these things. And I have to remind myself of what mommy said when she says that too, and combine those two, because they're just saying, you're not going to get that all the time. And it took me so long to just understand it doesn't matter how good you might be to somebody. If that person doesn't have it within them baby cakes and they don't know how to reciprocate, they're just not going to do it. It's just fact of the matter. It is what it is. So you have to either take people as they are, not trying to sit and change them and mold them and do whatever you want, especially the older people get. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. I always say, as long as you definitely should be getting and receiving the givens in a relationship. That's without a doubt. And bare minimum is not effort, but compatibility. Sometimes you have to teach people. Sometimes you have to bring it full circle for them because they may not have seen, heard, observed, experienced any of those things that you might have in your upbringing or just in any of your experiences, even when you got older and you're out of childhood now and you're on your own learning the world. Your person may not have seen just may not know exactly how to love, may not know how to reciprocate. And just if that person is open to just saying, you know what? No, I didn't see that coming up. And I really don't know what the meaning of that is, but they're open to understanding you and learning it from you. That person has a good heart. That's a good person to be with because they're open and willing to understand your point of view. But if that person's just like, no, I didn't see any of that growing up and I don't even want to know how to do it and understand it, any of that, you got to go. Because now we're talking about that's a whole different beast. That's not compatibility issues. That's you just on your own little train and no. So sometimes just you have to leave people right where they sitting. Leave them right there and don't feel bad about it. But other than that, if a person's just open, like, hey, you know what? I didn't experience a whole lot of affection growing up. I didn't see a lot of it growing up or even after. Like, they don't understand whatever that compatibility issue is. They might just not have seen or observed it or felt it. They don't know what it is. So providing somebody with the opportunity to learn it. And then if it becomes cumbersome, like I said, just negatively impacting your well-being, whether that's emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever the case. But if it's not negatively impacting you and that person's really just trying to be open and say, hey, like I want to learn what it is that you're trying to give me, and they are open, be there for them. Open up to them that other way and teach them that. Have that patience because it's not always about jumping into the next thing, jumping to the next relationship because that other person may not be open or they may know how to love, but they're not even trying to understand you. And that's a total different topic. Being able to love and nurture is one thing or be there for somebody, but do they know how to do it for you? There's a difference. I'll save that for another day. I'll end it with that. As always, thank you for taking the time to tune in and let me know what you all are thinking about the whole compatibility thing. Like leave some comments on my Instagram at Today's Candor Podcast. My podcast is now uploaded onto YouTube. That is finished uploading all 21 episodes. And then this one will be up there, of course. So that is on YouTube. And also my reels will be up on YouTube as well for those who either don't have an Instagram or don't want to create one, fully understand it. So all of the podcast items will be on YouTube moving forward and all of the previous episodes. So in the meantime, stay safe and stay candid.